Welcome, guys. Today we're going to be doing the first of our many Reading Between the Frame podcasts. And so the new format that we're going to be doing with Reading Between the Frames is that I'm going to be bringing people on that I know that I've worked with or that I've seen their work in the film industry, and they're going to come on. We're going to talk a little bit about their work, about what they do, and also their favorite movie. So today we have my brother, my best friend, someone who I've worked with for quite a lot, Aren Mineo. He is an actor, he is a writer, he is a dancer, and the movie that he's choosing for today is perfect for the horror season, The Thing. How you doing, Aren?
All right, man. All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. So listen, let's start this off with why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background, and yeah, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, you got it. So as you said, you know what my name is. I was kind of born and raised in Jersey, in the U.S. for the first 11 years, and then I moved back to Japan, and I was living there until I was 20, and then I've been back here ever since. And from, I guess, like the youngest age, like 11 or so, I started dancing, and I was dancing until I was around like little 20, and then I've been dabbling in and out of dancing here and there ever since. But as you know, you and I went to the Esper Studio, and that's where, well, Elias and I met. And we've been friends ever since, and we've been co-writing stuff as well as shooting anything and at any time that we can. And yeah, right now I'm kind of personally working on my TikTok as well as creating my brand as an actor. Yeah, I guess that will be it.
So in terms of Japan, just so that everyone can know, you are half Japanese, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you were raised on both in Japan and in America. So you got
Exactly. Yeah.
both sides
My father's, I think, second generation immigrant from Italy. And my mother and my father met over in Japan during a show called Zorba. And he married her and brought her over here and had me.
And your father was John Mineo, right?
Yes.
So you want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, so my father has a hell of a resume. It spans about 40 plus years on Broadway. And ever since he was 17, he's just been on Broadway for his entire life. He did like West Side Story. He was original cast member for West Side Story. He also did Pippin. He also did Chorus Line, I do believe. And I think the last show that he did was Chicago, the revival. Yeah. And after that he became a teacher, and he was basically giving his I guess what he's accumulated over the years to his students over in Japan.
And the style is the Fausi style?
Yes.
You with him?
Yes, super sensual, all about the sex.
Yep, and we see it in a bit of your dancing as well. You got that same charisma.
I didn't have a choice. So that was his style. It basically became his style. Even Chicago, the revival, that was brought together by Anne Ranking, but it was solely based on, I think, in the beginning, invites. And my father had a span of time when he wasn't being hired. And after around 40, it becomes, I think, difficult to stay in the Broadway business unless you're kind of used more as a principal, as well as like for more singing parts as well. But there are, I think, more limited. It's hard to be a chorus member when you're in your 40s. It becomes tougher. Not that it's not impossible, but it's almost like kind of legendary if you're staying in your 40s and in your 50s and you're a chorus member that is a hardcore dancer. That's really difficult. So yeah, he was invited to do Chicago the Revival, and that was all Fausi. So I think Anne Ranking wanted to work with all the Fausi members, and he just was super, I think, lucky as well. But he had the skill set. I think a lot of people now that this is what I've heard. So we can't really say like any more than that. But a lot of people would tell my father that he was more Fausi than Fausi himself.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Fauci was not like a balletically technical dancer. He had his style, but apparently, from what I've heard, he really relied on his dancers to take the movements that he gave to, I guess, technically finish them out.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, so he was more of a creator in terms of a style and just needed his dancers to complete the form. And I do
Mm,
believe it was more suited, I think. Uh, Now this is a little controversial, I guess, but it was more suited for a feminine body
mm,
just because it was during the time of sex,
mm,
jazz. It's like the peak of that time.
mm,
So it's all about that inner going 150 miles per hour, while on the outside it looks like you're not moving at all. It's kind of
mm,
a little mystical. It's got a good amount of magic to it. It's really cool. You just want to move only what you want to move or only what you're supposed to move and get it to the back of the theater, and that is ridiculously difficult. Like
mm,
you will take a very, I guess, specific form and only move one body part sometimes.
mm,
And that needs to get to the back of the room. And that is all about spreading that energy there. And it's really difficult to do. And
mm.
it's all about relaxation. My father used to say it's all about relaxation. And it's kind of funny because when you tell people relax, it's like, oh no, we
Yeah.
can't relax.
It's like the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll relax.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
so
so this actually really, I think it transitions well to William Esper, right, and the Meisner technique, right? So, for those who don't know, you and I both we studied at William Esper Studio in New York City, and William Esper is like he studied directly under Stanley Meisner, who pioneered the Meisner technique of acting, which puts a lot of emphasis in the moment and in doing, in the
yeah,
physicality of acting, right? Acting is doing; it's not emotion, right?
yeah.
And so, we studied there. We did our seminar. I think you did the full course. I did the
I
basic.
did the core.
You did the
Yeah.
core, and I did
So I
like
had the voice and speech and movement with the acting.
right.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Like between you and me, they for me to go to second year, they required that I did the voice and speech, and
Mm.
what I got out of that.
I didn't know they required you to do voice and
They
speech.
did, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Some of it was that my speech was not clear.
okay.
But yeah, but they also said it would help my acting. And
Yeah.
when I went to it, it was so interesting because the whole first year, you think, okay, my acting is becoming natural because I'm focusing on an activity. That's sort of
Yeah. You
what this is
focus on
about.
anything but yourself. So it's
Yeah.
either on the other person, activity. Yeah.
Yes, which is similar to what you were saying about the dancing, I think, to some degree, and maybe you can go into that in a second. But I was just going to say that in this, when I did the voice and speech, it was just, and this is, for people who have never taken acting, I highly recommend, even, like for those who are looking for like a spiritual experience, the voice and speech, there was something, this sounds very woo woo, but there was something about how once you kind of release the tensions in the body, you can kind of let yourself truly be. Like it's so weird. You'd see people, and
Yeah.
you would see this before the voice and speech. You would see them in the actual class, and these are two people who know nothing about acting, live out a real moment, and you're watching it as if you're in the room watching two people truly argue. It's like it's not real, but it's true. And then
Yeah.
when you see them in the voice and speech, it was just incredible to see how you would have someone that's so tense, and the moment they loosened up their body, their emotionality would come.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how does that, how did that translate over from dance to acting? And
Mm,
in your personal technique, when you act, how do you apply that?
okay. So I'm a pretty strong believer in that if you are not physically free, you cannot be mentally free. It is when you're accessing a well, and I'll just call it a well of your emotions, of whatever imaginary circumstance you're creating in your mind to access your emotionality. We have defenses along the body. And I do remember Nancy. Nancy was our voice and speech teacher. There are mainly like it starts in the stomach. Some people hold tension from the stomach and then into the chest, and the last defense is your throat. And the last defense is the mouth.
Yes.
We'll hold our tongue.
Yes.
So there are so many defenses of in everyday society. You cannot let your emotions just run rampant. You will look like a crazy person. In fact, you won't be able to function. You're not allowed to.
Yeah, I was struggling with that.
Yeah. But we need that. We need that in class. We need that in performances. We need that in any kind of character development. And in fact, you need that in any kind of art form that you choose. Or else you're going to stifle whatever you can bring out to it.
Yeah.
So the work was very physical, but you have to learn how to let the body go. And I think that concept leaned into the dancing for me quite easily, just because I was used to moving my body in ways that were not on an everyday. And I wouldn't have to really watch my physicality. Some people, when you're really tense in the beginning and you start acting, that physicality gets in the way. And in fact, you're going to be watching it because someone's going to point it out to you. Oh, your breathing is a little tight. From that moment on, you're going to be thinking, oh, where am I supposed to breathe? How am I supposed to breathe? You have no way you can be in the moment. That's impossible. You're constantly looking at yourself. So for me, I remember just going into the class almost like an hour prior and warming up my body. And that just consisted of movement, just all movement.
I remember that. And I actually, when I would see you do it, I would be like, well, I'm not doing it. I'm just sitting here kind of breathing a little bit. So it actually really helped me because I started trying to copy you, and it actually did help acting. You just, it's so strange.
I mean, it does. Like for me, all of my emotional preps, when they were well crafted, it wasn't just mental. I needed to physically move my body. So I think it's different for everyone. However, for me, the imagination wasn't quite enough. A lot of the times it took on a physical form, and it wasn't something that everyone necessarily saw because, you're behind the door sometimes when you're emotionally preparing. It's very personal and specific to you. That being said, I'm sure a lot of people have similarities, but for me, for sure, I needed to take a physical form, and that somehow kind of accessed that imaginary circumstance and my physical body together. And it will make it pretty well grounded for me to then go out and interact with the other person in the room. And I still do that to this day. And in fact, all the emotional preparations that actually work very well for me need a physical form. So for sure, dancing just translates right into it for me. But of course, like you were saying, this woo-woo-ness that we think acting is, or that instability that we think acting is or actors are, there's a certain amount of realistic work that is compounded to achieve it. And it's our job to let that emotionality come out. So everything up to that is actual physical work. And I think that's where you and I kind of really liked the William Esper technique. The Stanford Meisner technique. Yeah.
So, something that I really enjoyed about Meisner that's different from the other techniques is the grounding in like the sensory reality, like that you always have an activity to do. You have something that it, and it's funny because you talk about the woo woo, but what's interesting is that, the reality of actually doing something, you don't realize it when you watch a film, but it's the thing that I think leads to genuine emotion. And that's why that physicality, you have that background in dance, I have that background in martial arts. And it's something that it's like they say no mind, right? Like no mind, the mushin, right? And it's this idea that you don't do it, it does you. It works kind of through you, and that kind of being from moment to moment. I think at least for both of us, really appeal to our sense of.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. I mean, the ability to let go is the only way to be able to do the work, right?
Mhm.
With martial arts, I now this is just from what I'm assuming, of course. You let me know. With martial arts, it's you have to be reactive in the moment off of the other person. It's
Yeah.
really not about you, I am guessing. It's what is in front of you at the moment and how to respond with the other person. And dancing is very much so the same. You have your basic counts, whatever the counts are for that music, and you have the choreography. But it's really the in between moments of the choreography on a step between one and two, that the dancer needs to fill. So
Mm.
it's not just about choreography and dancing. And that's what also my father used to say was, are you dancing to the music or are you dancing with the music?
Mm.
So there's a huge
That's
difference.
great. Yeah,
Because
I
with dancing, all you can do is listen to the music and you have to move with it. And if you're just dancing to the music, you're not giving an experience that is beyond moving. What you're doing is relaying steps, which anyone can do. You can grab anyone off the street and teach them how to dance, but a dancer knows how to translate steps into how to make that incorporate with the music to give a different experience for a viewer.
Yeah,
So
I think that's very similar to acting in the sense that, and for any of those who are, who are watching, who are interested in becoming an actor or just in directing as well, because I think that oftentimes directors overlook this. Um, the idea of truly listening, that's the thing
yeah,
that even in big movies, and look, I think actually the bigger the set, the harder it is to do this. But you see it where it's like you're not really listening. You're not really, you're just kind of waiting for the moment to say your word. And that's the same thing as like if I'm fighting you right now, right? We're getting into a fight and I'm waiting for the moment to punch you and I'm going to do this punch. I'm going to get hit in the face because I'm not adapting. I'm not really paying attention to what's in front of me. And I think
mm,
it's the same thing with you and with dancing, you
yeah,
know?
it's very much so the same thing. The moment you start moving to the music instead of with, you're no longer listening to the music. So you're just a body that's moving. And that
Mm,
is not that's not acceptable, I think, as a dancer. You're too
mm.
much in your head at that moment. Now you're counting your steps. Now you're counting the
Yeah,
music.
it's
Now you're
oppressive.
counting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
oppressive. Yeah,
exactly. You're not really active in the doing, which
yeah,
is, it seems very much so the same amongst every physical, um I think, art form. But that probably translates to most everything, I believe.
I agree. Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's like a craftsman thing.
yeah,
Anyone that's really into a craft of what they're doing learns how to let go of preconceived notions of what needs to be and will work in the moment of what they have to do. And
yeah.
that is when the
That flow
magic
state.
kind of happens.
Yeah, that flow state.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
really enjoyable. It's really hard to get there. Most of the times they're going to be in your head until you really start getting used to how to get into that flow.
Yeah.
I struggle with that with acting all the time because you're thinking of, oh, what did I do last take? I have to match
Yeah.
it. I have to do
Yeah.
this. I have to do that. Where am I in terms of, oh, my body aches here now. Oh, I'm twisting my tongue here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
it's
the hard part.
essentially,
Yeah,
yeah,
being
it's
aware of how
essentially all
you
the
come
same.
off on the camera. Yeah.
Exactly. You're going to be ultra aware of those things. And I think that's a process that's necessary. Anyone that's in the pursuit of any kind of craft is going to have to go through that period, and it's going to be different for everyone. Some people might have more of a proclivity to it and they can let go easier. There are people that are probably more in the sensory realm. They're good at just focusing in on a doing much easier than people that might be more so in their head, more
Mm,
so in their feelings.
mm.
So everyone has a proclivity to something that might make that process easier. But you're gonna have to go through it regardless, and it
Yeah.
sucks because it makes you feel like you can't do crap.
Yeah.
But that's just natural, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said something. I'm gonna, just touch on this one, and then I have I want to kind of transition. But whether you're sucking your feeling, I think that's a really interesting one because especially if you're directing, right? You could be like, okay, listen, I need you to be very emotional in this scene, and a lot of the times, the worst scenes are the scenes where people are too emotional. I know you struggled with it a little bit too, right?
Yeah,
You were the first to cry in the class,
yeah,
and I remember the teacher saying like, yeah, that's not enough because you have
yeah.
to be receptive, right? The
Hmm.
emotionality can't block you out, you
Exactly.
know?
Some
Um,
people get too invested in them, and yeah, our teacher used to call it the shit blanket.
yeah,
You throw,
yeah,
throw the
yeah,
shit blanket over to you, and you're not
yeah,
being able to react to the other person anymore.
yeah. To the
So
reality that, like you
yeah,
said, sensory, or that the here and now, you
yeah.
know?
So
Yeah,
it's like what is it? So again, this is what my father used to say. He used to say, with dancers, dancing is a given. If you are a dancer, you better know how to move your body. That is a must. That's the baseline. It's probably the same for acting, right? If you're an actor,
yeah,
you have to be emotionally available. That's the baseline. Now,
yeah,
what else can you bring to the table? And the what else is you have to let it go and trust that that's going to still be there as you're working off of another person,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, yeah, the magic, if you're going to call yourself something, whatever that requirement is the baseline,
yeah,
and then the artistry begins. So
yeah,
it's yeah, it's kind of magical in that sense. Being
yeah,
able to do the craft is not enough. There's
yeah,
something on top
yeah.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the what I'm gonna butcher it, but like there's like a Zen phrase that says like to the beginner, the mountains are mountains and the rivers are rivers, and then to the
Mm,
man, what is it to the master or the learned, the
okay.
mountains are not mountains and the valleys are not valleys and the rivers are not rivers, and then to the enlightened, the mountains are mountains, the valleys are valleys, the rivers are rivers. It's like you kind of come back to it in a way that's
Yeah.
free, that's transformed.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, so we talked about the acting. I don't want. I think this is going to be good for another podcast because I think I. So what I'd like to do going forward is that we're going to be revealing a little bit more of the projects that you and I have worked on and some of the things that I have shot. But you and I have been working on a couple of projects for like going on maybe 5 years now,
Yeah.
developing. And so, we have a project that again, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's a horror film that is more of a psychological horror. And so, one thing that I've noticed, right? So, like, a lot of people want to do this thing where it's like, I'm a writer, director, actor. And it's like, each of those are really hard. Each of those are like, you can spend an
Mm,
entire lifetime doing that. And something that I
yeah.
think that I have struggled with as a director, as a writer director, is realizing, oh, okay, you have to really, really surround yourself with people who can fill in the missing pieces because otherwise you got to spend a long time really learning those pieces. Like, for
Yeah.
example, in the scripts that we've worked on, I tend to be very story oriented. If you look at a lot of
Mm,
my videos on YouTube, on this channel, there's a lot of analysis of structure, of the visual structure, the story structure, the
mm,
symbols, where you bring in that human element. So and that's really helped. Like it's like, okay, Elias, that makes sense. This is the transformation, but what do they want? Or
yeah.
how do
Yeah.
they feel? So could you share a little bit of your approach in terms of writing and like, some of the stuff that we've worked on? We don't have to get into specifics, but how you work with me and just how you work in general as a writer.
Mm.
Any maybe tips or anything you can give?
Well, yeah, when working with you, um, well, I lean towards more character oriented things anyway. Um, I do believe that if you can't believe in the character's circumstance nor the character's reactions or actions, no one's going to follow a story anymore.
Mm,
There's no reason to, in fact, because now you're being lied to, if that makes
mm,
sense. You're
mm.
you're being asked to forcefully believe in a character that is not believable, and that is, it's like a slap in the face to an audience. It's like,
And
why
that's different from the acting, right? That's
that,
separate from the
no, it's separate from the
yeah,
acting. As like a story, you
yeah,
have to be able to track where your character starts and how this character is going to end. And it has to be in the realistic sensory. You have to be able to see, and I guess you don't necessarily have to take the side of the character, but the character has to be believable in the imaginary circumstance that you place him in, or else we can't empathize with him anymore. A character that is too evil and only does the evil in the world, you're going to check out, because we can only take in so much bad. We need a balance in terms of, all right, this character is evil, but what are the human qualities here that make it realistic? What are the nice areas that he has? What are the realistic places? And how is he breaking those morals that we all kind of abide by? Is it logical? Is it emotionally understandable? These things, I think, are things that we analyze as we're watching so that we can track a person. And we do this on a day-to-day level. So if we're sitting down in front of a screen and doing it, that's only natural. So it's really important for a writer to be very aware of how this character is going to develop, or else you're going to just mess up. The story arc will not matter at that point, because no one's invested in a person. They're just invested in a storyline, and no one wants to do that. So for me, because you know storyline, right? You know transitions, you know where things need to come structurally. I just really hyper focus on, is this a realistic situation in terms of how is this character reacting? How is this character's reaction going to affect the next action that he's going to take? You know, these things are the things that I track in order to keep it in check. And I think that's why you and I make a great partnership. For me personally, when I write, I don't have a specific structure. We don't work similarly in that aspect. I see, when I'm listening to music or anything, I see scenes. I see scenes and I see characters. I see the scenes and I see the characters, and I see them in bits and pieces throughout the story, and I just have to create in between parts that tie everything together. But I don't think structurally. I think more in terms of character.
Because I'm the same. What's gonna happen next? Well, like, what got me to that scene? If he's blowing up a building, why is he at the building? You know, like stuff like that.
Now how am I gonna make all of this make sense now? And I think that's where mainly a lot of the third act hiccups are. You know, it's like, we know where we want to end it. We know where the start is. This whole entire middle part, I don't know about that. We'll piece it together. But for me, for sure, I just start writing. I don't need to know where I'm going in terms of the middle aspect of it, where I get lost the most, because it's really, that's where the structure is important, because it will feed into where your character's drops are. Right? Well, where is the character gonna fall? And it's really hard to make that a definitive moment if you don't know how to structure stories well, because there are things like pacing in terms of how much time do you have left.
Especially for movies, it's really hard.
Now you have to have a well of knowledge in terms of a structure in order to break structure. Right? You need rules in order to know how to bend them. And it's a story structure has been developing for thousands of years, since the cave art times, right? We know immediately when we see a structure of a story how to follow it, where to follow it, what's missing. And so people aren't really focusing on it, but they will know when something's not right. You know, they'll be able to identify something when it's not right. But when it's good, it's hard to identify what makes it good. You know, it's a really kind of cool, magical thing. I try and take into consideration from the audience's perspective when watching this, what am I tracking the most? Because that allows you a lot more control as well. how am I going to make this audience now shift gears from the story's structure to more of the character, and now the other side characters, and back onto the environment? All of these things feed in, right? So you need to be able to captivate your audience and walk them through, but still leave enough room there for their imagination to work as well, because you'll get
Yeah.
bored if everything's fed to you. That's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
fun to watch. There's
Yes.
no reveal, there's nothing
Yeah.
tasty there. But
Yeah.
um I think that writers struggle there as well, because some writers might be really into their own work, and it can be almost close to narcissism, to
Yeah.
the point where everything is spelled out to you that nothing's interesting anymore. I think a lot of
Yeah.
anime kind of falls into that with narration at times.
Yeah.
It-
I think that's
It's like
something to do
we'll
with like,
feed you every moment that has been discovered
yeah.
and turn it into words, so you
Yeah.
don't have to think at all.
Yeah, I felt
But,
like I just did a review on Oppenheimer, and I felt that there were a couple of moments like that as well, where it's like, okay, you showed it to me visually,
mm,
and now you're explaining it. You don't have to explain it; you just showed it to me, or
yeah,
auditorially.
yeah,
I think what you're saying is also really true in terms of like you have to be aware of that writing isn't enough, right? Like a script is not a novel; a script is a blueprint. The missing component here is the visual, right? So I was watching
mm,
Locke yesterday, which is a movie I think I'm going to review on this channel a little bit later. But it's basically Tom Hardy in a car making phone calls. So it's like, okay, so how do I combine that with the visual to keep us interested?
mm, mm,
And I think Stephen Knight does a great job with that. But it's that's the missing component that sometimes I think writers may miss.
mm,
And then what you were saying about the third act, that's a whole nother thing that we can talk about as well, where I think this issue with the third act that usually happens is because of people that are focusing too much on the story, right? And they're not doing what you're doing because they're like, okay, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Batman has it's like Batman has to fail here. He has to win here. He needs to you know be put into the dirt, but then he'll come back. And that last how he comes back, it's like, okay, that's what you want to happen, but is that what Batman needs for this story? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe
mm.
Batman
Okay.
needs to die for this story. It's like, oh, well,
Mm.
we can't have that happen because he's Batman. See, it's like this is where the issue happens. It's like,
Yeah, the transformation actually, that I guess you're right. Dropping the character is a little easier than getting him to rise back up.
yeah, but no, but it's also that like not knowing the characters well enough to know what the character needs in that.
Okay. Where is that character
That's
going?
and
Yeah.
this happened with Star
Yeah,
Wars.
you know what? You're right. You know what? In fact, some of our writing is similar in that aspect, in that once we know what the character actually needs, it's like, oh, we have to change the
Yeah,
story now a little.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
That's why I
right.
like.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought it
yeah,
back to that because
yeah. I
how many
remember
times
us
have we
doing
we
that.
worked the ending out and we're like, oh, he doesn't need that.
Yeah,
Especially if you're going
that's
for
not
something.
it. So,
Yeah, like we went for something really psychological with our horror film. Very Silent Hill 2 esque. Very what's another film that kind of the Babadook. Like it's a film that is as much about a personal inner journey through someone's demons as it is with fighting monsters. That if you don't figure that out, you're going to be changing that ending a lot, especially because it's such a
yeah,
dark place, right? Like
yeah.
people's reasons for doing certain things are very complicated.
Mm,
Like okay, you know, just as an example, someone kills someone, right? That's the whole problem of the film. He just killed someone, right? And now he's trying to cover it up. Okay, why he killed that person needs to be super clear, and then you have to unpack it on such a character level that
yeah,
even like the actor can pull from it, on that much of an analysis. Because if not, where that character ends up and what you're doing with that ending is not
yeah.
gonna, you
it,
know.
it, it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't match correctly. Yeah, it is a pain in the ass when it happens, though, because you have to kind of look at the like maybe 3 months of work that you probably put into it and kind of go, well, I'm gonna have to change this, and if I'm changing this, then this has to change. I
Yeah,
think as writers get more mature and they really understand what kind of story they're writing, they are probably able to avoid this more. because
Yes.
they know what the story's meaning truly is, and
Yeah.
they'll match their character to it from the get-go. So they
Yeah.
already know what kind of story it is. And so
Yeah.
that part, I think, needs to be flushed out really well in the beginning. Who am I writing this for? What is the message here that I want to convey?
Yeah.
And if that wavers along the way, I think the third act it's gonna show,
Yeah.
because the character's transformation does not necessarily match the storyline that you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
And so it's like, uh,
So what happens is
yeah.
they just drop it. That's what usually happens. They just drop it and tell the story they want to tell, and it's like,
I
okay,
mean, yeah. At
yeah,
that point, though, there are other political things involved, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. And then you have like,
yeah, it's like
the
our shoot
limitation.
date is already set.
Yeah,
The financing is already put in.
yeah, yeah.
We have producers that want this in the script as well. So,
Yes, things
it's not.
we've both had to struggle with several times. Well,
Yeah,
I'm sure we're gonna get into that stuff later.
I do believe though, like that's really difficult because it's not always the writer's fault at all.
It's not.
When a
No.
movie's not great, it's like from someone that is constantly trying to break down a movie though, when you know that you'll be able to start telling if it was really the writer's fault or not at times, because
Yeah,
you'll start seeing that all of the basic things, key components are all there. It's as though someone took that and said, I want this now. And
yeah,
it's a
yeah, yeah,
greedy
exactly,
moment. And when you
exactly.
see the greed come
Yeah,
out, it's like, that was probably not the writer.
yeah.
That was
Right.
probably
Historical is a good
yeah,
example.
it was
How they
probably
kind
the director.
of, yeah,
Yeah, there's just so many aspects that are out of your control in filmmaking that
yeah,
at any given point it can be messed up. It can be messed up from the beginning with the writer to the producer that's producing it to the director that is working on it to the actors that might want to have other
yeah.
changes made to it. So
The
and then
editor.
post production with the
Yeah,
editing as well.
yeah,
So for a film to come out beautifully, there is like an enormous amount of work that is inconceivable for people that probably don't work on films.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so
yeah.
let's actually use this as a transition to talking about The Thing, because I think The Thing is
It's
a
one of the
film.
few that probably
It
really,
does a really good job. And
yeah.
just I want to preface this with, this is something I think I'm not sure if I spoke about it in my previous videos, but I'm going to say it here. The horror movie structure is one of the hardest structures to work with. And John Truby talks about this in his book and his discussions about the different genres of film. The reason why horror is difficult is because oftentimes you have a monster that's so powerful against very weak
Mm,
characters that are flawed or just incapable of fighting it. So the
mm,
best films tend to be ones where the monster is physical, right? Like
mm,
A Quiet Place, right? It's a physical thing that you have to fight.
mm.
The
Okay.
more esoteric the monster gets, the less likely the main characters are going to win, and the sillier the movie gets. The
Mm,
other issue with horror films is that it's often one monster that you want to keep in the dark for as long as possible, that then ends up coming back and kind of hitting them so many times that it gets repetitive, you
yeah,
know? And that's where it's like, okay, how do we keep this going? Which is why horror movies tend to be shorter, the better ones, right?
yeah.
What I'm seeing now is a transferring of genre, which is something that we did with the film that we worked on. Barbarian does it. It's like, we got to either shift up the genre or add another monster in. Now, The Thing breaks all of that. The Thing, what's so cool about it is the nature of the monster is always
Yeah.
changing.
It's
So,
super refreshing every time.
yeah, it's like you're
Yeah.
always on your toes. So let me
Yeah,
start
and
with the,
you're also looking for it at that point. You're kind of
yes.
excited as well to see
Yeah.
what's the next thing gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So let's start with this. Why The Thing? Why did you choose The Thing? Is it your favorite movie? Is it, what is the reason why you want to bring it up on this podcast?
it's not my favorite movie, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that after working on horror with you, I used to hate horror. I couldn't watch it. It would scare the bejesus out of me, and I would just leave it alone. It was a genre untouched. But after working writing horror with you and trying to analyze horror, the fear starts to go away very quickly once you understand. Mainly, you start getting a gut feel for how horror movies are gonna be, kind of.
Yeah, the
And
pacing,
now you're expecting things.
setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I start coming across things that are unexpectedly good, it excites me now. And it's something that I want to watch and I want to be scared. I'm looking for something now to
Yeah.
genuinely scare me.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to do that when you start desensitizing yourself to
Yeah.
horror genre.
Yes.
Um,
Why I've always liked video games, horror video games, because they're more ambient and you're more involved.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think
you're physically playing it. You are the character, so you're
yeah,
going through whatever the character's
yeah,
going, right? Yeah,
yeah.
I think
But
it's
there's
far.
exceptions. Like The Shining puts you in the Overlook so much that you feel like you're there. You know?
That's so weird. I never got scared watching The Shining.
Huh? Me neither. But I watched it as an adult, and I think as a
Okay,
child I would have been freaked out by that. Yeah.
okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Kids would be freaked out anyway. They
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
freaked
true.
out over every point in case. That's why I never watched horror until I hit 20 again,
Yeah.
because I was scared shitless when I was younger.
Yeah.
But back to it, the
The
thing.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite movie, but I think it is beautifully structured from beginning to end. It is scary, and it
Yeah.
has conquered the test of time with
Yes.
the limited effects that they can use. They spent hours and hours of endless trial and error to get it to where it got. So I think overall, it's just a beautiful piece to look at in terms of everyone was in it for the same goal. That's what it felt like as I was watching it, because at any given point, it could have been a screw up and
Yeah.
it could have been
Yeah.
silly to
Yes.
watch. And in fact, when it first came out, critics killed it. They immediately killed it. And I think it was also that two other films came out that year that blew up in the box office, that it also made the thing go by very quietly as well, if I do remember accurately. But it also broke or kind of tarnished John Carpenter's
Reputation.
work for
Wow.
quite a long time because of that,
Wow.
which is a shame because it's now a classic.
Yeah, I
But
think it's his best work. I think it's his
yeah,
best.
yeah. And there was an interview that he did, I think a while back. He was like, if I can get in the room with the critics that were writing about my movie, oh boy, I remember that. Like
Yeah, he's
you know,
he's a character. He just shits on he blatantly just shit on the other directors. I was like, wow, I don't care for the style. It's pedantic. I think he literally used that
oh
word.
wow.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at it though, that's kind of funny that he says it's pedantic, because his work is quite the opposite when it comes to the thing. The words aren't the important thing, right? With the thing, there is no wasted scene, is one of
No.
the things that I love, right?
Yeah.
The characters develop with the thing that is happening in the
Yeah.
moment. And what else is great is in the beginning, you're already able to empathize with the characters that are inside the bunker. So the first
Yes.
scene, the first few scenes are all about these characters. Of course, there's the doing going on, right? The
Yeah.
action is the
Yes.
dog is running from the helicopter. So there
Yeah.
is some kind of plot that's being pushed in the beginning. Now we're seeing the bunker, where you see this quiet, nothing going on. Everyone seems bored. It's almost like they've learned to become alone with a room full of people. It feels like they're all roommates that need to deal with each other rather
Yeah.
than really try to interact and build bonds. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like they're very close at all, nor do they feel like they're professionals at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, they just don't feel that way.
What are they doing there? Are they scientists? What exactly is going
We
on here?
don't know
Yeah.
what the hell they're doing there. It's like I'm guessing though that they're analyzing, ice. That's
Like
the only
air. I
other
don't know.
reason why.
It's very clear that this isn't like super science. Like it's a science base, but not super science.
But it's not super science-y,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it makes the characters relatable, though. right? We're not watching the scientists. We're watching people that need to deal with the boredom of every day.
Yes.
And that is something that anyone that is sitting down and watching a movie can relate to. Why? Because we get bored in our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
So watching someone else going through that and knowing that there's an adventure waiting to happen with this dog coming, it starts to build tension. Now the dog running, it starts to get repetitive. There are a lot of shots where this dog is just running around,
Yeah.
but I still understand what was being done there.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and so they're super relatable from the get-go. You can also see people's tempers and how they deal with each other as well.
Yeah. It's kind of set up
McCree,
you know that they're not going to succeed. Like this is not a team that's going to come together
yeah,
well.
it doesn't feel that way at all. It
Yeah.
just feels like a lot of masculine
Yeah.
energy. And
Too much.
it's the
There's no
80s.
women. It's like too much testosterone.
Yeah. It's like the 80s, kind of like,
Yeah, very 80s characters.
yeah, very,
Even
very
the white
80s.
guy's scruff with the beard.
Yeah,
Of
even 3D, right? He has a cowboy hat
course. Yeah.
and he doesn't have a winter Antarctica kind of
Yeah.
outfit. He has a cowboy hat that's ready to go,
Yeah.
armed with everything, kind of a feel. But so there is an action of what's going on that's pushing the plot, and there's also character development that's happening simultaneously. They are never separate, and that is something that I really highly respect. I think it's very difficult to do because you have to leave it to the actors as well. So the action of what's happening and also the character development are happening simultaneously and never separate, and that's really hard for, I think, if a writer is writing it from a screenplay standpoint. I think that's hard to do, partly because you have to trust that the actor is going to be able to make clear choices for the character development, right? I mean, the action of it is pushing the characters in a certain direction, but that balance is really difficult to maintain while having individuality amongst the characters without the blending happening too much, where the characters all look and feel the same.
Yeah.
They still
Yeah.
very much so have their own distinctive feel. Like
Yes.
Childs, for instance. Childs is very proud as a person, and also he believes that he is always in the right.
Yeah. Very
And
alpha.
that's,
Very. He's got something to prove.
yes, very alpha,
Yeah.
and that is very clear from the get-go. McCready feels like someone that's like constantly looking for the missing piece, and he is always working on his toes. He never really
Yes.
plans for anything, but he's working on every moment to moment and adapting in the story, and it feels that way, right? Because he
Which
does
is why
what's
he's the hero.
necessary.
Yeah,
What's that?
and which is why he's the hero. And I think it's
Yeah,
important to, the ending of the film is actually set up. It's predicted in the beginning because, right, he's sitting down, he's playing chess with the computer, right? And
yeah,
he loses. And what does he do?
yeah,
He destroys the computer. It's very much
yeah.
like it's foreshadowing. Yeah, this thing is it's gonna get you to checkmate, and your best way of dealing with it is, I'm just gonna blow everything up.
Blow everything up.
you know?
But
Um,
he's so adaptable, and the story's monster is all about adaptation to the
yes.
circumstance and to the moment. It means that a character that's able to plan might be two steps behind, because this antagonist is not about planning. It's about how to work with the people in the moment, every single moment.
Yeah.
But you also see that there's a separate thing going on, and we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
this antagonist is all about working with the situation, and McCready is all about that, right? So in the very beginning, after they kill the dog, after the dog is killed and they kill this person, they find out where this other bunker is, and McCready and another character go over there, right? Now, this is a little bit of a flaw. I don't know why these two characters seemed totally fine going through this completely demolished and destroyed bunker without looking afraid or feeling afraid in any way.
Yeah, it's very
Feel like
80s kind of like this is why they don't feel like scientists. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
they feel like soldiers. They feel like this
yeah.
is
They kind of
time.
do.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
what
it matches
it
what?
changes the feel of the movie, right? Because you look at a
Yeah,
movie like Deep Blue Sea or even Jurassic Park, it's kind of similar, right? It's like these scientists stuck with these things that are trying to kill them, but it gets very
that's true.
scientific, right? These guys
Yeah,
aren't that. These guys
no,
they feel more like soldiers or regular guys from
they
the
most
80s,
definitely do.
which is like an 80s guy will take out any other guy just by standing there, just because that's how they are, you know?
Yeah, I mean, um, that's exactly what McCready is. He's
Yeah.
the he's the '80s dude.
Yeah.
Um, but that scene, it does two things. It pushes the plot forward, right, with us giving us missing information of what happened to this bunker and where did this dog come from and about the helicopter in the beginning. And two, it pushes character by showing us what McCready is like. He's very quick to notice the kerosene. He's very quick to notice the ice block that the alien was trapped in.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
he's quick to analyze the situation, and he applies it just as quickly, because when the dog later on turns into the alien, right? He does not hesitate to say,
Yeah.
grab, go grab Childs, tell him to bring the flamethrower,
Yeah.
right? So he
Yeah.
learns so
Yeah.
quickly, and it doesn't feel out of place at all. It's like, oh, you learned very fast, and
Yes.
it makes sense from an audience's perspective as well how to deal with this, right? And
Yeah.
it also makes McCready feel like someone that knows how to deal with this situation.
But also flawed, right? Because like you
And
could
also
argue
flawed.
he's not the best leader.
No,
You know,
no,
he
McCready
doesn't
is not.
really utilize the team, and part of it is that the team isn't really conducive to working together in the beginning, which is I think what you were saying that you like about it, right?
Yeah,
But it's like even Childs is kind of undermining him. It's like he's not the best. Like, come on, let's go, let's do this together. We can do this. This is the plan. It's more of like I'm figuring this out, and then also the monster itself doesn't
yeah,
let them make a plan. Like they're
no,
constantly having to adapt.
exactly.
In regards to the base, I think it's interesting to draw a parallel to Alien, where it's like very similar. Where like with Alien, they come into this other place that has this
Yeah,
with the monster. It's sort of
it's already
immediate.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah, which is like I don't want to see what happened, but that mystery is very
yeah,
interesting. You
yeah.
know?
How it plays out is like it, it it foreshadows, right, in the best possible way, with the mysteriousness of a monster that can wreak havoc.
Mm-hmm.
With it had already happened, and we're now waiting to see it happen again and unfold in a similar manner.
Yes.
But we it kind of points to the end point, but
Yes.
we're still very much so curious in terms of how it happened. But we
Yes.
want to see it unfold with this present group.
Yes.
So that foreshadowing it's not a symbolic foreshadowing. It's really in the sensory. So we
Yes.
want to see it happen.
Yes.
Um,
I feel like something that also makes this monster possibly one of the greatest monsters of all horror films is its ability to adapt, but also it's so enigmatic. This is very much cosmic horror.
yeah.
This is something that's like, wait, hold on. Every piece of it acts like a monster. Every piece of it can adapt, so
Hmm.
it can never really truly die. It sounds like a monster. It sounds like pure life. Something like this. How do I put it? Like animalistic. It's very
Hmm.
animalistic, and yet it's building spaceships. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? That's the part
Yeah.
that's like, wait, it's smart. It has a will. It's not just some sort of monster like that's getting out of control.
Yeah. I mean, how it unfolds, I feel like if that monster wasn't split in terms of what it wanted to do, um, it would have taken out the base much faster.
Mm-hmm.
But it had a plan, and that's
Yeah.
another thing that I liked about this monster
Yeah.
is that it has a clear plan,
Yeah.
and it's foreshadowed along the way. With when McReady goes over to see that the helicopter parts are missing, or was it a
Yes.
tractor, one or the other? The
Yeah,
parts
no,
of
it
it.
was at first it was destroyed, and you thought that Blair destroyed it, but then later on, it's like, oh no, he used parts of it,
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
this
So
ship.
that's like,
Yeah,
that's about midway through the film, I think,
yeah,
that it happens. So it's like, oh, there's something else going on, but
yeah,
we're immediately that goes out the window because we're immediately back to how we're going to deal with this monster again, right? So
yeah,
we have to put it on the side. It's forced onto the
yeah,
side, and
yes,
but you can tell for sure that there is something else happening that we cannot see,
yeah,
and I really like that because now the stakes are higher, but
yeah,
because the immediate stakes are still there, you can't concentrate on it. So
yeah,
you're at the mercy of it. You have to
yeah.
let it be.
They're always on the
Uh,
ropes. For like the
yeah,
whole film, they're on the ropes because the
yeah,
thing itself keeps changing. You're like, wait, hold on. It can turn into animals. Wait, it can turn into people. Wait, it can actually mimic people to the point because like one of the first people, who is it? Norris. Norris.
yes.
Yeah. So it's shown, everything in this film is so clear. Like I was waiting to kind of like, and this is what you meant about it not being wasteful, right? Like you look at a movie like The Shining, and it's so enigmatic, and people go, well, Kubrick wanted to do this and that. And you can get all these theories from it. Can't really do that with The Thing. Like I thought that there was like an element where maybe you can track, like, because the whole mystery, the whole thing that everyone talks about is like, is Child the Thing at the end? You know,
Yeah.
I think he is. There was talk that they wanted to do a sequel and they were going to make it that he wasn't, but there's too much evidence that he is. The way he
Okay.
talks at the end is very stilted. It's like his reaction to the huge explosion, weird. It's like, that's your reaction, like, hey, where's our? They didn't ask about the other two people that died, you know. Um, Kind of chill about the fact that they're both going to die because there's no
Yeah.
heat, you know. So to me, that tells me he's the Thing. And then
That's so fascinating
with
because I
chess.
actually take the standpoint that he's not.
Really?
Yeah. I
Why?
don't know why. I don't. I just got this gut feeling that Childs is just as what is it? He's just as
Adaptable?
no, no, no. Doubtful that McCready is the thing.
The Thing.
He's thinking
Oh,
that
I see. So
McCready
that's
is the
coming
thing.
off of McGreedy's
Yeah.
wife.
So the both of them are looking at each other, kind of going, "Are you the thing?
Oh,
Are you
I
it?"
see. I
And
see.
see, that's the stance that I took, and
Ah,
that's what justified Child's reaction at the end was that he's
and,
not sure. And
uh,
see, that's why I really liked it at the end as well, is that you can't really tell. You can choose either way,
yeah,
truly, in that film.
yeah,
And it's great. It's like it's
yeah,
open ended. But this thing has survived a spaceship crash. This
yeah,
thing has survived the first bunker trying to burn it to hell,
yeah,
and it's. I feel like it would survive an explosion as well. So
yeah.
I mean, either way, even if they're both not the thing, the actual fear of it getting to a larger population of people is still there,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And that's
Well,
another
look at
thing.
how they burnt it, and it still was alive. Like like they had to really torch it. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
and this is where Carpenter gets really smart, right? Because we can actually track the Thing and how it infects people to a point, right? We got the dog. The first person the dog infects is Norris because you see
yeah.
the
It
outline,
is
right?
yours. Yeah,
And then he infects the other dogs, and then Bennings because you actually see it. And this
yeah,
again, you don't have to work up the conspiracy stuff, but where it gets a little vague is that um, when the dog is before it's torched, part of it gets away, and that part kills the guy. I forget the guy with the glasses. He kind of looks like Steve Jobs. I forget his name, but he was like the guy that was trying to make a plan, you know. And when he dies, it's not clear. You just see him torched, and they assume, oh, he torched himself so that he wouldn't.
yes,
And that's a little weird, right? That's not really
yeah.
right? So that leaves a little mystery. And then it's like, at what point is Blair infected? Because Blair does say, "Look, I'm back. I want to come back in. I want to come back in," and that part is weird. And then this also makes you go, what is the Thing's limitations, right? This part I find so interesting because when you're writing, you have to figure out how much do I want this thing to
Yeah,
talk.
what are the rules? What are the
Yes,
rules for the
and the
monster?
Thing has rules, right? It can only hold form for so long, right? Like Norris, he slowly starts to like devolve. He can't hold it. Another thing that's very interesting is that Gary was going to put Norris in charge, and he says, "I don't feel comfortable with that." And he's already the Thing, so it
Mm.
means that the Thing knows that if it's in charge, if there's more light on it, it can't
Attention.
mimic people well enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
People are gonna go, "You're acting
yeah,
weird," and then we see that a little bit in Blair, the way that Blair talks, weird. And in my theory, if Child is the Thing at the end, Child a little bit too, right? So it's like it can mimic because a lot of times as you see Norris through most of the film, he's the Thing, and
yeah.
he's talking, but he's not at the forefront.
No.
So I think when he is the Thing, he's even holding the flamethrower, which is really crazy.
Mm.
You know? And then the other guy, what is his name? I forgot it. The one that looks kind of like Christopher Lloyd. That he's the Thing. That when they're tied up in the chair, he we never see him get infected. So we're like, that comes out of nowhere. But Carpenter leaves room for him to be the Thing. You know what I'm saying? Like for anyone to be the Thing, even McReady to some degree. And that whole scene is just terrifying. Like his face. And that's another thing that this film does so well, like you were talking about with aging, with the special effects. I mean, on par with like The Fly, with just the body horror element, right? So it's like
Yeah.
cosmic horror plus body horror creates this very, very unsettling thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and another aspect of the film that I really liked was the lack of music.
The
How
lack.
they how they use music is
Yeah.
really um they leave it up to the uncanny movements of people as well as the atmosphere that's already there.
Yeah.
Like for instance, that dog coming in in the beginning, coming in through the hallway. This is right after the kitchen scene. I think the one who got shot, I think that was Bennings, right? No, that wasn't Bennings.
Shot. Yeah, no, he was shot in the leg, and then he eventually
In the
becomes.
beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. He yells out to the guy in the kitchen, "Hey, turn that music down. It's really annoying." And again, a little piece of moment where you get to see characters and how they
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
are.
Very character driven.
Yeah, exactly. It feels good to hear that.
Yeah. Or like when the
And
guy goes in and pretends to do it and just doesn't do it. It's like that's
yeah,
so.
exactly. That is right there. You could tell what kind of person that is.
Yeah.
But that slow pan and in that scene where you get to see that character going around to turn off that music but not doing it and then walks off, that slow pan there with no music, you start seeing this dog come out.
Yeah.
And the way this dog moves is very specific. It's
Yeah.
up and down, and it's only the snout. You only get to see the snout in the beginning. It's up and down,
Yeah.
and when it comes out,
the whole time too, like he's.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't feel correct. In terms
Stilted.
of it being a dog,
Yeah.
it looks as though it has a motive of something. It's up
Yeah.
to something, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
And the lack of music just makes you emphasize that movement alone, and
Yeah.
also the little footsteps of the dog as well. It just you think that something's about to happen, and yet as it's panning, you start seeing the dog going onto the side of the screen. You want to keep your eyes on it, but it's like, okay, what are we going to look at next? Because we know we're panning away from it. It's like, okay, wait, what's going to? And then the dog goes right back into the frame, right?
Yeah.
He never leaves the frame, but goes back into the center of the frame and goes into the room where what's his name is there?
Norris.
Norris, yes.
Yeah.
Where Norris is there, and it's just the shadow. It's just the shadow. You don't see what happens, but you know something's going to happen. And then it cuts away. And there's no music throughout that entire thing. And it has the most amount of mystery in it as well. And he does so
you
much.
Feel like you're there.
You
feel like you're there. Yeah.
And he does so much with very little. That is so little. I mean, of course, training the dog to do that might have been a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's like very little, and he knows exactly what to show and what not to show, and it feels like I can sit and relax as a viewer. Like I can
trust the director. Yeah.
You start trusting the director, right?
Yeah.
So you can let go and kind of go, all right, take me on the
Never
journey.
waste my
I'm ready.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes David Lynch. It's like I love Lynch. He gets atmosphere so well, but I'm like, where are we going with this? And I think this is the exact opposite. Even The Shining. There are times I'm like,
I
okay,
remember we watched
this kid.
a David Lynch movie with you, uh, and I wanted to strangle you at the end. I was like,
You still haven't seen Eraserhead. That's a hard movie. That's a hard movie. That's up there with The Fly, which like you watch it once.
okay, I'll watch it.
I will say, yeah, I agree. I think the last element I would say that about the thing that really makes it a pretty perfect movie is that it isn't just about fighting this thing. It's about them fighting each other, how they turn on each other so quickly,
Yeah,
right? And that
yeah,
psychological element of what the thing does, it makes you not trust. It gets inside and infects. It makes you not
yeah.
trust. You know?
I mean, even with a group that was very trusting of each other, I think that would have eventually
Oh,
happened. So
absolutely.
for a group that doesn't really know each other or like each other or just has to spend time with each other, that kind of chaos is believable,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Played
that's
very
why,
well too by all
yeah,
the actors.
and you can also feel that everyone knows somewhere that we have to keep it together. So
Yeah.
even the effort to try and keep the group together and to have a goal.
Yeah.
And that aspect of it is very, it feels believable from someone that is sitting down and watching it. It's like, you guys need to regroup now. You guys need a plan for the
Yeah.
next movement. And they take the steps to do that and
Yeah.
still fail
Yeah.
utterly until the very end. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's exciting to watch. Yeah.
It's it's a great movie. It really is. I think it's a classic. I think it's one of those movies that I would say is a perfect movie. There's maybe one or two scenes where I'm like, like I think when Windows dies, it's a little weird.
Mm.
Um, and then like you said in the beginning, where the run with the dog is a little long. But honestly, this is like barely
Yeah.
issue. Like the
You're like
whole.
nitpicking at that
Yeah,
moment.
exactly. The film
It's
is
like,
just
why
so
even?
solid. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so solid. And so I'll leave with this. Let's close with this. Like, what is it about the thing that you feel is most haunting? That is like, that makes it a horror movie to remember. Or how does it relate to you?
So on an everyday, I'm someone that has quite a difficult time, I think, interacting with the world, right? So leaving the house and dealing with people on an everyday is actually very draining for me. So naturally, I have a small group of friends, small group of people that I can trust very deeply. But I don't have like large groups of people that I can go to and just hang out. That's not something that I find particularly any joy. Uh, just just the idea that, so I think in my mind I have a very safe space that I can escape back to, and I think that bunker is like that little space where it's safe. It's safe. I've learned how to deal with all the aspects of what that bunker is, right? But to have something on the outside be able to so easily infiltrate it, that's scary to me. I think, you know, you can spend your entire life creating such a safe space for yourself personally as well as in your mind. But at any given point, an anomaly that comes from the outside comes inside as like almost like a friend, right? This dog comes in like a
Yeah,
friend,
yeah.
right? Um, you let it in, and then it can just utterly destroy everything that you've built. That's a very,
Who you
yeah,
are,
yeah,
like it takes over your identity.
yeah.
You know.
So I think that's a big fear that I do have. So I think that also makes me lean towards why it's so scary for me, or why I keep returning back to it, even though it's no longer as scary as the first time I've watched it. I watch it once a year at the least. It's like
Yeah,
something I always go back to.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think that it speaks to that fear of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're the only one, and I think that's why the movie is so successful.
Mm.
This is definitely something where even the appearance of the creature is so hard to lock down. It's like, what does this thing really look like?
Yeah.
What is it? And ultimately, like, once it gets inside, how do you distinguish it from you? And
Yeah.
I think that's psychologically unsettling.
I mean, it also points to people that you've known for months or years. They may not be who you think they are still,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the thing kind of, like you said, it infiltrates, takes form of it. But in a certain aspect, people do that on an everyday. You change little by little.
Yeah.
And by the time you know it, you might not be exactly the same friend that the two of you have met years ago. That person might have changed quite a bit to the point where you can no longer relate to.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to kind of decide to end relationships at times.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot that you can interpret as with the thing.
Yeah. Well, listen, man. Thank you for coming on. I knew I wanted you to be the first person that we interview, the first of many, and I think this is going to be the first of many podcasts because we're going to start talking about some of the work that we've done and just analyze some
All
other.
right.
Yeah. So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I'll have you back in the future, and for everybody that's watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that baloney, and yeah, we will see you on the next episode, and don't forget to keep reading between the frames. All right, man. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, buddy.